Good evening, and welcome to our series, War+Lovers, Making the Musical. This present television series, Making the Musical, is actually a companion program to my live stage show called War+Lovers=Why. The live stage show is a love story set during the Vietnam War. The live play is semi-autobiographical, based on my experiences as a young kid growing up in the 60s, and research I've done on the Vietnam War. So this present television series is all about the various machinations that go into developing an original Broadway play from the ground up. The title of tonight's episode is The Tripod of Storytelling, aka Making the World a Better Place. Successful theatrical producers know that there are basically two kinds of promotion for a show, two different ways of promoting a show. One would be paid advertising, and the other one would be what we call free publicity. And there's really a pretty big difference between the two. Paid advertising is necessary, but it does tend to come across a little bit like a sales pitch. Sometimes the claims are a little too good to be true and even hyperbolic at times. Broadway's the best. The performers on a Broadway stage are the best in the world, in my opinion. They're just amazing, very well trained. The productions are amazing, but it's hard to put on a great show, and every show can't be the best. But if you take a walk through the theater district, you'll see this show is the best show of the year. This one's the best musical of the past 10 years. The other one is I saw one that was the best musical of all time. One of the hardest things to promote would be a straight play. That's not a musical, just a straight play with actors on a stage. And producers understand that if you're going to sell tickets for something like that, you probably better have a couple of movie stars involved, because it's just you go to that ticket booth on West 47th Street, and the line for musicals goes hundreds, winding up and down, hundreds of people. But if you want to get a ticket for a straight play, you go right to the front of the line. That's the difference in terms of, most people just want to have a good time and be entertained, whereas the straight plays are usually a little bit more intellectual, I guess you might say.
At what point did America become so divided? After World War II, we were all together, but then came Vietnam. Let me tell you a story about the time the people of Camelot began to fight among themselves. One piano, two lovers, three armies, one Vietnam.
One way you could get free advertising for a straight play would have your actors go and appear on some of the talk shows. And some contracts may even require actors to do that. So that's one way of getting free publicity. Another way would be if you could get a hit song involved with the show. I know I went to college like 1,000 miles from Broadway, and I wouldn't have known about any of the plays except there were some songs that were on the radio. I know the song from Hair was on there, the song from JC Superstar was on there, and the James Bond movies, 007, have always had a big produced song to go with the release of the picture. Goldfinger was a big song, and You Only Live Twice with Paul McCartney, and more recently with Skyfall with Adele. So that's a great way to have some music on the radio to help promote a production or a movie. That's great. And there's one other way that is the best, better than all of them. The very best way to get free publicity is if somehow you can be mentioned on the nightly news. That is something that is really hard to do, but you're going to reach more people that way than any other way. In fact, when Gone with the Wind was released in 1939, it was front page news everywhere. It was a huge event. Everyone covered it, and even they had a promotional tour where they were made the casting for the character of Scarlett O'Hara a national talent search. So we did that for about a year. And by the time the movie came out, everyone was anticipating it, and it was a news event, so no one could miss that. But as movies became more ubiquitous and more common and more omnipresent, it was much more difficult to have something unusual enough that it would be featured on the news. Years ago, when MTV first came out, they actually played music videos. In fact, they played them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's all MTV did, was play music videos. And they were characterized by very, very busy editing. The 3-minute music video sometimes would have 50 or 60 different edits or shots in it. And it was very, very busy, and that kind of became the vogue of what people expected to see. And then there was a movie released in 1998, still in the MTV era, that was actually mentioned on the news. And the reason it was mentioned on the news is because the first scene was 17 minutes long, and that was so unusual that it actually made it to the nightly news. It was a movie called Snake Eyes with Nicolas Cage, and Cage played a Atlantic City police detective who was kind of a loose, glad-handing type of guy. And the 17-minute scene wasn't just a talking head scene with two people, in a shot that just took a long time. It was a moving shot where he was visiting a casino where they're having a prize fight that night. So we went all the way down the halls and in rooms, saying hi to the fighter, who he apparently knew, just walking around checking security, and it was a very, very complicated and complex shot. And so unusual, especially for the time, that it actually made it to the news. And that's how I became aware of it, and that's why I saw the movie, because it was on the news. And another actor, Sean Penn, made a comment on that. He noticed how much, how conspicuous it had become with that unusual opening. And he made a statement. He said, well, Mr. Cage isn't really acting. He's simply performing. Mr. Cage isn't really acting. He's just performing. And some people were a little unsure of what the point was. What was Mr. Penn trying to get to? I think most people are familiar with what you might call the Robinson Crusoe scenario, or in storytelling, the Robinson Crusoe plot. That would be a person shipwrecked on a deserted island somewhere in the middle of the ocean. And the movie Cast Away actually was a Robinson Crusoe plot with Tom Hanks. And I'm going to make a variation on that and call it the Tower of Babel plot, or the Tower of Babel scenario. So instead of one person, we have 5 people who are shipwrecked on a deserted island, but they all speak a different language. And they're completely different languages. One speaks Greek, one speaks Chinese, one speaks Cambodian, one speaks Swahili, and one speaks Portuguese. So these are languages that have nothing to do with each other, no vocabulary, nothing. Now, those people will not be able to communicate verbally. They just won't be able to do it because they won't have the time to construct a language. Even if they're shipwrecked for 5 or 10 years, there won't be time to construct a language. Language as we know it evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. It took a long time. Everything's arbitrary, what you name something, how you give a direction, all these things, they're constructs that took a long time to develop, and it simply couldn't be done quickly at all. And along with spoken language came storytelling. And storytelling has always performed a very important function in the development of a culture. And that's what I refer to as the tripod of storytelling. The first element, the first piece of that tripod would be, yes, there needs to be some entertainment in there, but that's only really a part of it. Another very important part of a story is that it provides information about the world, because not everybody was able to go out and scout and look around. So the person that told the story needed to provide information about the kinds of things that you could find out in the world. And then the third thing, part of the tripod, would be guides to socialization, because societies, cultures need social mores. There's certain kinds of behaviors that are desirable, and there's certain kinds of behaviors that are not desirable. Certain behaviors help the group, certain behaviors don't help the group. So those guides to socialization and social mores was also a very, very important part of storytelling. When I was a young man, in the late 50s and 60s, there were 3 television stations. And there was an occasional movie theater, maybe 2 or 3 movie theaters in my city. And those 3 broadcasters had standards. I mean, we didn't even consider it censorship. It was just standards of what was considered proper and even moral. You couldn't have nudity, you couldn't have bad language, you couldn't have people behaving badly, you couldn't have people smoking, drinking, all those things, it was regulated. And the movies could stretch it a little bit, but there were very, very distinct ratings on the movies back then. And we still have ratings today, but there's so many, I don't even know if anyone can keep track of them. But the first chink in the armor occurred with cable, because when cable TV came out, all of a sudden there was no regulation. They could put anything on there, and you started seeing movies with nudity. You started hearing some words that are not considered appropriate for national broadcast. And to some extent, the rules started to change, but that was a separate, usually there were 20 or 30 channels, and they were movie channels. So it was stretching the rules a little bit, but something has happened in the last 10 years, which has really taken all the rules and completely thrown them out the window. And that's the emergence of smartphones, which can very easily shoot very high quality video from just about any angle, and internet portals that can broadcast and effectively publish those videos, like YouTube for publishing to the public, Facebook sharing apps and things like that. And the problem with this is we now have millions of publishers, and anyone can publish. And so what this means is, number one, there's no controls, and the quality of storytelling has really taken a hit, because the traditional role that storytelling has performed in culture has really been almost completely eroded. So getting back to Sean Penn's statement, which seemed a little highbrow, but it was like, well, Nicolas Cage in Snake Eyes isn't really acting, he's performing. What was he getting at? Well, I think he might have been suggesting that perhaps the the tripod of storytelling was being attacked a little bit. I think he was saying that a movie shouldn't be just about entertainment, because a movie that's just about entertainment it's a missed opportunity. And to some extent, it's even a waste of time, because a movie should be a chance to make the world a better place, and it shouldn't simply be entertainment for entertainment's sake. I went to see the production of Miss Saigon at the Broadway Theater a few years ago, and to be honest, I didn't really like the opening, and the reason I didn't is because it made it look like war was a 9-to-5 job, and the soldiers went out on patrol 9 to 5, and then they came back at night and went to the brothels, and that's not really what war is like. So it did, in that world of that story, it kind of felt like that. And the idea of the guy falling in love with someone that he met, and I didn't really feel that was that strong of a story. So halfway through the first act, I didn't really enjoy it that much. And then came the dancing and the music, and I never realized how much dancing contributes to a live show. Because when you see dancing on TV, it's a little different. It's not the same impression. It's like listening to an acoustic, like someone playing solo violin or solo acoustic guitar or solo piano. It doesn't come across that well on the TV. But if you're there and you can feel the strings vibrate and you can see the artist close up, it's a completely different experience. And I'd seen other plays with dancing before, but because I was a little not that crazy about the storyline, for a few different reasons, having done so much research and there wasn't any dialogue in it, it was just what they call a sung-through musical. And for me, it just, what it didn't say could fill volumes. Like the Pentagon Papers, I don't think it had nothing that was in the Pentagon Papers was in that production. But the way the dancing uplifted that production was just amazing. And before that, by then was just getting ready to do my latest series of shows, which started about 3 years ago. And I decided, because I had all these piano compositions, and I just decided, hey, we'll have a dancer go ahead and dance during those piano compositions. And it just turned out to be a wonderful, lucky, fortunate decision, because every production we've done, everyone comes to me and say, we love the music with the dancing, and everyone says that. So even if they think it's more political or more this or more that than it really is, sometimes people don't quite get your message that well, especially when I'm doing it in a very small theater, and we can talk afterwards, and sometimes people will get up and they don't really get the idea that I'm trying to put across. But everyone seems to understand the music and the dancing, so that has been worked out wonderfully. So that is something that's I think a big part of my spoonful of sugar in this production, is that my original compositions, which are influenced by composers like Mussorgsky and Ravel and some of the expressionists and the impressionists, that's sort of the angle I'm coming from with the solo keyboard, and then the dancing with that, that's sort of my sugar to make the overall production to be as entertaining as possible.